Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Ali Taraftar, back with a brand new video. Today's Finance Talk, April 7th of 2018. I appreciate you being here if you're here live. If not, then you're watching this recording. Welcome and welcome. So today's going to be an interesting conversation because we're going to go deep dive into the subject of underwriting and the guidelines for underwriting specifically. Underwriting matters because you're asking for funding, whether it be unsecured or secured, whatever it is that you're asking for. You want to make sure that you're approved. Your approval has to be something that we have to consider when it comes to giving you the extension of credit, or whether you're looking for applying for the first time or the second time. Now, when it comes to following underwriting guidelines, when it comes to really understanding the rules and regulations as to how you can get approved for funding, the biggest thing you need to worry about is basically, how does your file look like? What are you preparing and what are you bringing to the table for the financial partner or the lender to seriously consider your application, to seriously give you the extension or funding that you're looking for. So today we're going to go over exactly a couple of steps in reference to how to properly understand underwriting, what advantages you can take with you, what are some of the benefits of understanding underwriting. So let's begin by talking in reference to why it's important to know this specific topic for your chances of approval. Why do you need this? So if ever you've been denied for credit, or you're actually going out there and trying to apply, you've probably come across, a bunch of yeses and a bunch of nos. In most cases, probably more nos than yeses. This is true for a lot of people. Now, whether it be in the credit card realm or personal funding or loans or line of credit, this is true for the most case. Now, what's important to understand here is that when it comes to funding, there's a series of guidelines. Everybody follows these guidelines, whether you're not a banker or whether you're a banker, it doesn't matter. And these guidelines serve for the protection of money, serve for the protection of whatever's, coming out of their pocket, that they can be sure that they're going to get paid back. They can be sure that they're going to cycle that money to earn income that's necessary for the establishment or the institution. With that being said, underwriting is a very key role when it comes to extending that credit. Now, a lot of people will think underwriting comes in the time where they're just looking at your files and documents prior to approval. That's not right. Underwriting is a lot more than that. Underwriting is looking at you as an individual and assessing your needs, your current financial circumstances, your assets, your collateral, your credit, and a whole bunch of other things, including your buying patterns. So we're going to actually go into this today, and I want you to really pay seriously close attention to this because you will need this information. So today's topic is going to revolve around two different types of funding. The first one is going to be unsecured. And for the most part, people who are looking at unsecured could be anything between credit cards, lines of credit that are not collateralized, to, let's say loans and all these type of things. And you have secured, which is pledged or collateralized funding. In those situations, it could be a mortgage, a stock or bond, collateralized bond, or funding, as well as any collectible goods and all these type of assets like a CD, or anything that's a financial instrument that can be pledged in order to get the funding you need. Now, here's the difference between the both. The first thing you need to know is unsecured funding will typically come at double-digit figures in terms of interest rate. They will start probably at 12%. Some can go as high as 19, even 25%, or even 29%. Whereas secured funding has a tendency of giving you lower interest rates with a preferable term and an extended term, meaning you can pay up to 30 years, 25 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So that's the major difference between both. Of course, the interest rates and the terms that you get for pledging and not pledging. So one of the biggest things I'm going to ask you today, I'm going to turn it over to you, is I'm going to ask you, if you're here in this video live, you can actually post this comment below this video. And if you're here watching this recording, same thing, post your comment below this video. But I'm going to ask you this question. How many stages of underwriting do you think there is? Okay, how many stages do you think of underwriting there is? Okay, so that's important because you need to know this. If you don't know this, then you're going in and looking for funding, and the probability of you getting approved is probably going to be low because there are so many different factors to consider when you're actually applying for funding. And I need you to explain to me, and if you know this answer or if you're just trying to simply guess, I want you to answer this below this video. Tell me, how many stages of underwriting do you think there is? Okay, now don't cheat. Now, if you're watching this replay, don't go at the end of the video and come back to answer this question. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue this presentation. So here it is. Okay, there are 5 stages of underwriting. Okay, the first one is individual assessment. So Individual assessment is comprises of 5 different steps, and these steps are capacity or capability. The second step is credit worthiness, very important. The third is collateral, if you have any. And that's where it stops for the most part. That's where underwriting will be simplified from lenders to you, and they'll say, this is what we look at. But to be honest with you, there's 2 more factors that are very important. If not, they are the biggest reason as to why an approval happens or denial happens. And those 2 are, the fourth step is the exit strategy. And we're going to talk about that in depth further down, a couple of slides. And of course, the 5th step being calculated risk of default. This is very, very important. So there is a set of different things that we look at when it comes to this, particularly lenders, to see, well, how likely is this person going to be a problem for us? How likely is it that they're going to default? So we're going to discuss that in a couple of slides from now. Well, one of the biggest things you need to understand when it comes to funding, whether it be unsecured or even secured, is that leveraging is the secret. Now, if you don't have leverage, if you don't have, let's say, good credit or awesome credit, or if you don't have, an amazing piece of collateral that can be used overnight, then there is nothing that you can offer. Income is great here overnight. So, these are the things you need to understand. The key to funding, it's leveraging, but more importantly, sustainable leverage. It has to be something that, will last. For a lender, as an underwriting decision maker, we look at, okay, well, what is the probability of disappearing tomorrow? Very little when it comes to physical asset, whether it be real estate. With credit, we know like I said, it took you time to establish that credit. So for sure, and it's not going to go overnight. So that's the key. That's really the secret. And you need to be familiarized with this, because if you're looking for funding, you need to know, okay, where am I going to leverage? How am I going to establish leverage? How can I make the most of it so that I can get approved for whatever it is that I need? So when leveraging, and you do it the right way, you attract the right capital. And what I mean by right capital is, we talked about collateralized interest rates, the preference of that, and the benefits of that, and the more favorable terms you get by having collateral, and of course the extended terms you have. But if you don't have collateral, then if you leverage your credit the right way, of course, you can get still favorable terms, promotional rates, higher limits, all these type of benefits that you can get, 0% balance transfers. If you have good credit, pristine credit, you get rewards with the credit cards that you get, cash back, all these type of extra things that can be added as a perk to your file, so long as, of course, you have that leverage. So if you're looking for the right type of capital, you need the right type of leverage. It's as simple as that. Now, moving on to the next slide. So let's go over these individual items, out of the 5 categories we talked about. Let's go over them individually. The first thing we're going to look at is your capability, your capacity. Okay, how much do you make each month? And I'm talking making as in net earnings, not gross. If you make 100K and you bring in, let's say, 50K, then that's what you're making. You're making 50K. That's your net earnings. And of course, out of that, how much do you spend every month? How much do you spend every month? Are you spending out of the 50,000, let's say, whatever it is that you get, are you spending 80% of that? Okay, if you're spending 80% of that and you're spending, $40,000, then you're only left with 10,000. It's not a lot of spread. Okay, so how much are you left with at the end of each month after your expenses? That's very important. You need to have the accounting right. You need to make sure that you're presented with this information, or you prepare that information ahead of time. Now, this happens for a lot of times when you're going for a mortgage, when you're applying for a home or trying to move into a home. These calculations have to be very accurate. Now, you need to make sure that you do this on a month-to-month basis. You do some accounting, open an Excel sheet, and put the balance sheet together. Income statements, earning statements, expenses. I mean, you're not a company, but this is something that you need to keep with you if you have a financial goal of purchasing a property, or even investing in real estate as an investor. All these type of things are important. Also, can you afford the minimum payment, if it were multiplied by 3? So let me ask you this. Let's say right now, there's a minimum payment of, let's say, $500 on something that you're applying for. Can you afford $1,500, right? So that spread is very important. Now, of course, this cannot make sense if you're applying for, 2 to 3 different type of loans at the same time, but that's what we call a stress testing scenario. Out of the 2 to 3 items that you're applying for, can you at least do this for like 2 items, right? So the reason we say that is minimum payment is nothing. Minimum payment is just a small commitment that you need to keep the loan alive, to make sure that, the financial establishments are earning by extending your credit. But more importantly, can you pay it down? If you were to actually max out your credit card or something, can you pay it down? Do you have the capability of doing that? So that's very important. Also, how much history do you have with your employer? Now, a lot of people don't think about this, but that's very important, right? So have you been in the job for 2 years, a year, maybe, 5 years? The more maturity you have, the better the chances of getting approval. A lot of people will not tell you this. They'll say, no, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but that's the truth, because confidence is established based on your history, right? And of course, how secure is your job? Is it a specialized job? Is it a skill that, cannot be replaceable? Are you expendable? All these type of things. And this is not for the underwriters. I mean, they will consider these elements in the back of their heads automatically, but this is for you. Okay, how secure is the job that you have? How can you sustain your payments? And of course, how long have you been in this job, right? Are you specialized? Like if you're a heart surgeon, it's a whole different story compared to, let's say, somebody who is, for example, stocking shelves at a department store, right? So you have to think about that. Now, of course, you can be, in a department store with good history, and that department store has a good history of, like, the past record of employment, they increasing jobs year by year, and you got opportunity to rise up, and that's beautiful. But is your job security there? Do you have the credentials? Do you have meet that? One of the capabilities and capacity deals with that. So you have to be careful with that and make sure that you are honest about this. You have to write it down for yourself, not for the underwriter, but to yourself, in case if you ever get asked this question. Now, of course, nobody's going to go to the extent of asking you these questions, but you need to know this for yourself when evaluating, of course, your underwriting guidelines. Now let's go over credit worthiness. Okay, what is credit worthiness? Well, we know this. This is personal credit. How strong is that? So first of all, what's your overall credit score? I'm not talking about Experian individually or Equifax individually or TransUnion individually. What's your score across the board, right? And that's important. That's the overall score. So overall score, meaning, let's say if I were to take all three independent scores and add them up and then divide it by 3, that would be a ratio, okay? Also, how much debt to credit ratio do you have? What's your utilization, right? Out of the, let's say you have a total utilization of $100,000, by example. Are you below the 30,000 threshold in terms of debt or the balances that's on those utilization, on those limits? That's very important. Typically, yes, we look at 30% or less, but like I explained in another video, typically if you have 15%, you have some room, a wiggle room, or what we call buffer. So in case you need to use it for emergency, then you can use the extra and still meet the 30% obligation. That's very important. Also, how much positive payment history do you have? And what I mean by positive is, of course, maintaining the accounts, continuing your cycle, reporting history, whether it be, student loans. Yeah, that's not the greatest thing, but it's a positive payment history. You got loans, individual loans. You got diversified things like such as, term loans. You got revolving credit, the different kinds, not just credit cards, all these things. Okay, so that's what we call diversification. How diverse is your credit file? Also, what kind of derogatory items do you have, right? Do you have any late payments, collection items, all these type of things? And very important question for credit worthiness. Are you over leveraged? And what I mean by over leveraged is, okay, well, do you have, let's say, 5 to 6 different credit cards in the past 5 months that you applied for, and now you're going for an extension of credit, but those limits are very high. Okay, but based on your financial circumstances, including the income that you're making to the stability that you're in, that can be considered a scenario to ask the question of, are you over leveraged? Do you feel that what if the chances of you maxing out all that you have on your file and not being able to meet your obligations? That's very important. Now, what was the date of your most recent inquiry? And what I mean by that is, in the past 5 months, have you applied, let's say, just in the last month alone, on that entire 5-month average is the one that you're applying the most? If so, then you're leading on to trouble. So that matters quite a bit. So how much overall inquiries do you have? That's also another question you got to ask yourself, and the lenders will definitely look at when it comes to evaluating underwriting decisions. This is very, very critical. Now, for the most part, okay, what if your credit is bad? Okay, what if your credit is bad and you're not in a position to go for underwriting? What do you do? No, we got your back here at Best Credit Resources. We're here to help you. So, of course, if your credit is bad, we got our programs. We launched this mastermind. One of my associates will be putting this up on Facebook soon. The mastermind consists of 3 different groups, and you have a la carte credit repair service. What I mean by a la carte is you're not going to see this anywhere in the industry. It's customized to your report. So you got that opportunity to join us. We're going to give you more description on that coming in the next couple of days. But if your credit is bad, now you have several options. One, you can learn how to fix your own credit. You can go online. There's a lot of videos I posted up as well. Or you can basically come to us or whoever it is that you're choosing to fix your credit. Just make sure that they're fully compliant. So that's very important. Now, let's go over to collateral component of funding. This is usually when you're applying for mortgage, when you're applying for a secured loan, when you're applying for, let's say, multifamily financing. What kind of collateral do you have? And one of the components to collateral, there are three main categories and components to collateral. Very important. First of all, does your collateral have value? Quite some value. Does it have market acceptance? And what I mean by that is, if you look at real estate, okay, that has a huge market acceptance. Everybody's doing real estate. There's, several thousands of transactions daily that's happening on real estate. Market acceptance is a key component. Now, let's compared to real estate. If you have, let's say, a boat, market acceptance on a boat, maybe not so much. Okay, but it's still something. It still got some value. Okay, and utilization of equity. And what I mean by that is, if you already got a property or collateral that you're pledging, how much of that is left over in terms of equity? And what kind of ranking does the provider fall into? And what I mean by ranking is, let's say if I'm extending credit to you and I'm a secured lender and you bring to me your property and you already have a first mortgage on it. So you already have somebody get the first lien. And there's really a small amount of wiggle room, really. And you're asking for, let's say, half of that wiggle room. I could still do the loan, but my worry is that somebody's got first rank. So I got to wait in line before I get paid, after all the expenses paid and everything like that, in case of default. So that's very important. You got to check for that. You got to check for utilization of equity if you get enough wiggle room in there, or else it's not worth it at all, because nobody's going to be doing underwriting for something that they're going to be fearing that if ever they'll get paid back. That's very, very important. This is important also. The defined risk of default based on complex algorithms and calculations. Now, this is something that nobody in this industry will ever explain to you, and I'm going to go ahead and explain to you individually based on the itemized list below on what are some of these things that underwriters will consider. Now, patterns is very important. In the past history, looking at your spending, looking at your utilization, your credit history, if you have any type of things that has happened in your life. How did your spending go? How is your utilizations being monitored? And all these type of things, right? So patterns are usually typed into algorithm, like they put in certain things, and they also cross-reference that with other customers of similar nature and see, okay, well, what's the average score on this individual based on the risk profile? Are they, even though they have good credit collateral, even though their income is good, and they have whatever's necessary for executing this loan, this pattern, based on cross-referencing, let's say, average customers, what's their score? And they have an independent algorithm. Each financial institution will have that to identify the risk profile independently, because they have responsibility to their institution to protect their capital. Second, behaviors, right? So let's say, like I said, patterns of inquiries. If you applied way too many times, that's a risky thing, like you don't want to be in that position. But if you have, my God, you got to be careful with that. So that's very important. We look at behaviors. Purchase history, of course. Let's say in the past, have you made any major purchases? Do you have assets that are like sitting across, let's say, that specific area on your credit report, but it's maxed out, right? That's dangerous. You don't want to be in that position. And of course, cross-referencing databases and alerts on this particular customer. Now, this is an important component to understand. If you're in a dangerous neighborhood and you're trying to apply for property and financing, there are communities out there that, most lenders will look at and say, well, look, because of the risk in this community, because of the overall history of that community or the area that you're in, we can only extend to you this much, even though you have amazing credit score, even though you have all that. Typically, they will try to sway you away from that decision and explain to you why they believe strongly on not extending credit because of certain reasons within that specific area or demographic. Now, you want to be careful with that, because if you're applying, if you want to be a smart investor, of course, you're going to try to, de-risk yourself from going into a situation where you're going to be stuck. And so are the lenders. They're only do their due diligence. They're trying to protect their establishment. And like I said, they have criteria and protocols they got to follow. And that ultimately will give you whatever you need in terms of financing. Now, that's a defined risk, okay? Defined risk is very critical because you need this. When you're, let's say, going and applying for a loan, do yourself a favor, okay? Ask yourself, okay, what's my pattern in the past couple of months, right? How's my behavior with money, financing particularly, like in terms of credit? Yeah, what have I purchased in the past that will basically, there was a major decision, and how do I go about making that choice? Did it affect the way I'm going to think about money, or did it enhance it? Did it make my financial condition better? And if they were to ever cross-reference your database, have you closed any accounts because of, let's say, bounced checks, right? Or because of defaults, or even though you have credit repair, it doesn't matter. Credit repair is just cleaning up the reporting. They have shared databases, like I explained to you. They can cross-reference that. So, don't think that credit repair is going to solve any problems specifically if you haven't, adjusted financial conditions and behaviors. So be careful with that, okay? So we look at all this information. The lenders will definitely look at all this information and ask yourself this. And if you feel, okay, you're ready for underwriting, doesn't matter if you have perfect credit score or perfect utilization. Just don't land yourself in trouble. And what I'm saying is basically, if you're looking to apply for secured credit or unsecured credit, make sure that you can actually afford it and that you can actually, pay it off. And don't say, I'm going to pay the minimum payment. Don't do that. I'm here to help. Okay. Like I'm providing this education, but to me, I'm going to be doing you like no service if you're not getting value out of this. So I want you to be honest with yourself and say, look, can I really afford it? Do I really need this? And make the right choices and of course apply afterwards. But that's something that the underwriters, they just sit across the desk to review the file, do their risk assessment, and ultimately extend or deny the credit. Okay. Now, exit strategies. A lot of people don't talk about this, but it's very important. And that's basically, okay, most good borrowers, people who are really responsible, right? They'll go in the loan application with an exit already in mind. They plan the exit before the entrance. And what I mean by that is, okay, look, if you have credit card debt that you're borrowing, you already have a plan. You already know that for sure, like your income's high. You're just utilizing this temporarily. You're just extending yourself some time and you can pay it off. In a financial situation for, let's say, properties, whether you're getting into multifamily investing, you're syndicating, investors, or getting yourself into a situation where you're going to be leveraging the equity of that property for financing, you got to know that that market has, an open room or open door policy for other investors to join in or other people to come in and purchase that property, that they can actually come in and find opportunity to buy that property from you, and you still get some wiggle room. And then that property will appreciate with the market alongside with its demographics. So all these things are a key factor. Now you got to understand, okay, well, it's not just about credit cards and it's not just about, properties. It could be for business. If you're applying for financing for your business, what's the exit strategy? Are you able to sell this business in 3 to 4 years to let's say a family office, the type of individuals that I personally serve? These family offices are always looking for amazing businesses that they can acquire a majority stake. And the reason why, it's because they have substantial resources to back that, to make that business more successful, but they don't want to do all the legwork. So of course, do you have the strategy in place for the next 2 to 3 years to bring your business up to where it's going to be successful, even if you were to borrow? And that would be exit strategy, selling a majority portion to make sure you can recapitalize that debt and pay it off. So I'm just giving you a business example on a more complex level, but think about that. What's your exit strategy? How are you going to recapitalize that? And by the way, okay, here's a key point. Don't think of an exit strategy as something small. It's got to be very powerful. It's going to be for sure. Okay. Don't think of an exit strategy on hypotheticals. That's going to land you in a lot of trouble. Don't make bad assumptions. It's terrible. So make exit strategies and plan them based on, for sure this is going to happen, and all these type of things. Okay. So think about that. So with that, we're going to end this session. But before we do so, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay. Below this video, write in my comments or your comments, what will you be doing first? Will you be looking at the type of collateral you have? Are you going to look at your credit assessment, or are you going to be planning your exit? And if so, what have you learned from this video? What's the key takeaway? And share some feedback in comments. And if you have questions, once again, talk@bestcreditresources.com or simply write it below this video. And if you're here on my channel for the first time, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, turn the notifications on. So every time there's a video like this, you'll be first to be notified. I appreciate you being here today with me on this presentation. This is Ali Taraftar, your guide and mentor. I will see you next time, my friends. Bye for now.